Hey, I'm Emma. Welcome to Emma's Betrayal Stories now. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories aren't rushed. They're the kind you sit with. Today's story comes with an update and my own personal opinions throughout the story. Let me know in the comments if you agree or see it differently. Let's begin. I caught my brother lying about my career. I exposed him and built my own legacy. My brother's fingers were wrapped around the stem of a champagne flute like he belonged in the room, and he was smiling at my boss like they'd known each other for years. Yeah, Ethan was saying, voice smooth and loud enough to carry over the music. Layla's doing great. I basically got her started. She's always been more of an assistant type, you know? I told her, learn under me for a while, then you can branch out. The words hit me in the chest so hard I actually forgot to breathe for a second. My boss's smile faltered, just a flicker, because she knew exactly who I was and exactly what I did, and now she was looking at Ethan like he was a stranger who'd wandered in and started improvising lies for sport. I stepped between them before my brain caught up with my legs. My heels clicked on the marble floor, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to curl them into fists at my sides. Ethan, I said, and my voice came out low and sharp. He turned, still smiling, until he saw my face and the smile didn't disappear so much as freeze. I could smell the sharp citrus of his cologne and the champagne on his breath. I leaned in, close enough that it felt like a private conversation, even though we were surrounded by people in suits and cocktail dresses. "What did you just say?" I asked. He laughed like I'd told a joke. "Relax," he murmured back, trying to keep his tone light. He reached out like he was going to pat my arm, like I was an overexcited little sister. I moved away from his hand so fast it probably looked rude. My boss, Nina, stood there with her glass held midair, eyes moving between us, her posture suddenly very still. "Layla," she said softly, almost a warning, but I couldn't tell if she meant don't cause a scene or if she meant don't let him get away with this. Ethan's gaze darted around, checking who was watching. When he realized people were, his jaw tightened. It was a Friday night, and the event was supposed to be simple, a company fundraiser, a gala-style thing for a local scholarship program we sponsor. I'd spent 3 weeks coordinating logistics on top of my actual job because our department was short-staffed, and I'm the person who always says, I can handle it. I'd been the one on calls with the venue, the caterers, the AV team. I'd been the one who convinced a donor to bump their contribution by 20 grand with a single email that took me an hour to write and 3 hours to obsess over. I was also, as of that week, the newly appointed program lead for a huge client account. Something I hadn't even told my family yet because I'd learned the hard way that my news became either ammunition or noise at home. Ethan was only there because my mom had begged me to bring him. "It's networking," she'd said. "You know he's trying to find his way. Be a good sister." And because I still have a soft spot the size of a sinkhole for my parents' disappointment, I'd agreed. Ethan and I have the same face in different fonts. Same dark eyes, same thick eyebrows. If you see us together, you can tell we're related. But that's where the similarity ends. Ethan has always had this gift for filling a room with his story, his achievements, his plans, his big things coming. Growing up, he was the one my parents bragged about even when he was doing nothing. He'd make a vague announcement like, I might start a business, and my dad would look at him like he'd said he was going to cure cancer. Meanwhile, I'd come home with an award or a scholarship letter and my mom would smile and say, "That's nice," before asking if Ethan wanted more rice. When I got my first internship out of college, Ethan told everyone at a family barbecue that he'd pulled strings to get it for me. I remember standing by the grill holding a plate of buns, feeling the heat of the coals on my face, while my aunt congratulated him. I hadn't corrected it. I'd swallowed it because I didn't want to embarrass him. Because I didn't want to start a fight. Because I didn't want my mom to pull me aside later with that tight-lipped expression and say, "Why can't you just let him have this?" So I learned to be quiet. I learned to let the lies float above my head like smoke, irritating but intangible. And then I built a career anyway, one meeting at a time, one late night, one awkward networking coffee, where I forced myself to speak up even though my voice shook. This gala was supposed to be one of those nights where all the hard work felt worth it. I'd bought a dress that actually fit instead of one I'd convinced myself I could make work. I'd curled my hair. I'd eaten half a granola bar in the back office because there wasn't time for dinner. When I walked into the ballroom and saw the tables set, the lighting warm and soft, the place cards lined up perfectly, I felt proud in that quiet, private way I never really show anyone. Then Ethan decided to stand beside my boss and rewrite my entire life like it was his to narrate. Assistant type. I repeated, my mouth dry. You told her you got me started. Ethan's smile turned into a grimace. Layla, come on, he said under his breath. I'm talking. Exactly, I said. He shifted his body slightly, trying to block me from Nina's view like he could physically erase me. I was just making conversation, he whispered, the edge in his voice sharpening. Don't make this a thing. Nina cleared her throat. Ethan, was it? She said, still polite but cooler now. Layla leads one of our highest performing programs. She doesn't report to anyone except me. The satisfaction I should have felt at hearing that out loud was immediately contaminated by humiliation. Because it shouldn't have been necessary. Because my boss shouldn't have had to defend my job title at an event I planned while my own brother lied through his teeth. Ethan blinked, then chuckled like Nina had misunderstood him. Oh, I didn't mean literally, he said, waving his free hand. You know how it is. Family influence. Guidance. She's always had support. I stared at him. My hands were still clenched so tight my nails were pressing crescents into my palms. You want to talk about support? I asked, and my voice was louder than I meant it to be. A couple people nearby glanced over. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. Ethan's eyes flashed. Not here, he hissed, smile back on for the crowd. Don't do this. I looked at Nina. Her expression was careful, professional. She was giving me an out. I could take it. I could laugh it off, say something light, let Ethan's lie die quietly in the air. But something in me was tired. Not tired like sleepy. Tired like I'd been carrying a weight for years, and my arms were finally shaking. Actually, I said, and my voice surprised me because it sounded steady. Let's do it here. Ethan's smile slipped fully now. Layla. No, I said, and I turned slightly, so I was addressing not just him, but the little semicircle that had naturally formed, people drawn by tension like moths. Ethan, you don't basically get credit for my career because you share my DNA. You didn't get me started. You didn't mentor me. You didn't even know what my job was until 5 minutes ago. Someone coughed. A woman in a silver dress looked down at her drink like she wished she could disappear into it. Nina didn't move. She was watching Ethan, not me. Ethan's face went red in patches. Are you serious right now? He said, voice tight. Yes, I said. I'm serious. He leaned toward me, teeth bared in what was supposed to be a smile. You're embarrassing yourself, he whispered. I took out my phone with hands that still trembled. I wasn't even sure what I was doing until I did it. I opened the company's site, our public page with leadership bios, because I'd updated it myself last month. I turned my screen toward Nina first, then toward Ethan, then toward the group. My name, my title, my photo. The programs I ran. The awards we'd won. The client quote that mentioned me by name. This is my job, I said. This is what I do. And you don't get to stand here and pretend you built it. Ethan stared at the screen like it had personally insulted him. Then he laughed. It was a hard, ugly sound. Wow, he said louder now. So, this is what you've been waiting for? To humiliate me in front of your fancy work friends. I felt my stomach twist. There it was, his favorite move. Make my boundaries sound like cruelty. I didn't invite you here to humiliate you, I said. I invited you because Mom asked me to. You chose to lie. His eyes darted to Nina. Is this really how your company treats family? He snapped at her, as if she was responsible for his behavior. Nina's voice was calm, but it carried. We value integrity, she said simply. And we don't tolerate misrepresentation. Ethan flinched like she'd slapped him. He looked around, registering the looks, the polite discomfort, the curiosity, the quiet judgment. He set his champagne flute down too hard on a passing tray, making it wobble. "Whatever," he muttered. "Enjoy your little show." He walked away fast, shoulders stiff, weaving through tables like he was trying to escape the room without running. I stood there, breath shallow, heart pounding. I could feel every drop of blood in my body, like I'd been dunked in cold water. Nina touched my elbow gently. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded because that's what I always do, but the truth was I didn't know. I felt simultaneously powerful and sick, like I'd swallowed a battery. For the rest of the night, I kept catching glimpses of Ethan near the bar, hunched over his phone, jaw working. At one point I saw him talking to my dad because of course he'd called him. Of course he'd gone straight to the person who would soothe him. My dad arrived just after dessert. I saw him before I was ready to. He stood near the entrance, scanning the room, face tense, like he was walking into a problem to fix. When his eyes found mine, he didn't smile. He walked straight toward me. "What happened?" he asked. "Not hello, not proud of you, just what happened?" The old part of me wanted to fold immediately, to explain in a way that made me sound reasonable, to soften the edges so my dad wouldn't be disappointed. I didn't soften. He lied. I said. About my career. To my boss. My dad's brows pinched. "Ethan said you attacked him." I let out a slow breath. He would say that. My dad looked past me, as if Ethan might appear like a summoned spirit. "Why would you do this at an event?" he demanded. My hands went cold again. Why would he lie at an event? I shot back, and my voice cracked because it hurt more than I wanted it to. "Why is that not the question?" My dad's mouth tightened. He had that expression he gets when he's trying to keep control of a situation by acting stern. "Layla," he warned. I felt my eyes sting. I blinked hard. "I'm not doing this tonight," I said, and I stepped back. "I have donors here. People I worked for months to bring in. You can either support me or you can leave." My dad stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Then his gaze flicked to Nina, who was nearby, and suddenly he seemed to register the context, the power dynamic, the professional setting. He swallowed, looked embarrassed. "I'll talk to you later," he said, voice clipped, and he turned and walked away. I finished the night with a smile stapled to my face. I shook hands. I thanked people. I accepted compliments. I stood on stage and spoke about the scholarship program with my voice steady and my hands shaking behind the podium. When the event ended and the last guest left, I went into the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and sat on the closed toilet lid with my head in my hands, trying not to make a sound. That was the night I stopped letting Ethan narrate my life. And it was also the night I realized my family had been complicit, not loudly, not intentionally, but consistently. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. Not from Ethan. From my mom. "What did you do? Ethan is devastated. Your father is furious. How could you embarrass your brother like that?" I read them while standing in my kitchen, barefoot, still in the old t-shirt I'd slept in. The sunlight through my blinds made stripes on the floor. My coffee sat untouched, going cold. I typed back. "He embarrassed himself." I corrected a lie. My mom replied instantly, "You always have to be right." I stared at that sentence for a long time, because it was true in the way they meant it. I always have to be right, meaning I always have to be accurate, meaning I always have to refuse the story where Ethan is the hero, and I'm a footnote. I didn't reply. 2 days later, Ethan posted on LinkedIn. He wrote a long, glossy paragraph about guiding young professionals and mentoring my sister into the corporate world, with a photo of us from a family wedding where I looked mid-laugh and he looked smug. He tagged my company. He tagged me. I felt my skin crawl reading it. It wasn't just lying privately anymore. It was public, polished, and designed to make me look petty if I contradicted it. Comments rolled in. People congratulating him, calling him supportive, saying love to see family lifting each other up. My boss messaged me. "Do you want us to handle this?" I stared at the screen. My throat tightened. Because this was the moment I'd always feared. The moment where speaking up made me dramatic and staying quiet made me erased. I replied, I'll handle it. I wrote a comment under Ethan's post. Just 3 sentences. Ethan, I need you to stop misrepresenting my career. You did not mentor me, place me, or guide me professionally. Please remove my company and my name from your post. Then I took screenshots. Within minutes, Ethan deleted the post. Not because he felt ashamed, but because he couldn't control the narrative anymore without risking consequences. He texted me after, "Are you trying to ruin me?" My hands shook as I typed, "You can't be ruined by the truth unless you built yourself on a lie." He didn't reply. That should have been the end, but families don't let things end cleanly. They drag them. They poke them. They reopen wounds like they're checking if they still hurt. My parents asked me to come over the following weekend. "We need to talk," my mom said, voice already tight. I went because a small, stubborn part of me still wanted them to understand. I still wanted someone to say, "I'm proud of you." Or at least, that wasn't okay. Ethan was there when I arrived, sitting in my parents' living room like he lived there. He looked at me with this cold fury that felt almost unreal. My mom was perched on the edge of the couch, hands wringing. My dad stood by the window like he needed distance from the mess. Ethan spoke first. "So," he said, voice dripping with contempt, "you think you're better than me now?" I didn't sit down. I kept my bag on my shoulder like I was ready to leave at any second. "I think I'm done being used," I said. My mom flinched. "Layla," she hissed, like I'd cursed. Ethan stood up, stepping toward me. "You could have just talked to me," he said, and his voice rose. "You made me look like a liar in front of people who matter." "You are a liar," I said quietly. The room went silent. My dad's face hardened. "Enough," he snapped, but he wasn't looking at Ethan. He was looking at me. That was the moment something in me shifted, again. Not anger, clarity. "I didn't come here to fight," I said, voice steady. "I came here because Mom said we needed to talk. So let's talk. Why is Ethan allowed to lie about me, but I'm not allowed to correct it?" My mom's eyes filled with tears immediately, like on cue. "Because he's struggling," she said. "And I'm not," I asked. My dad exhaled sharply. "Layla, you have a good job. You're doing fine." There it was, their favorite trick. If I'm surviving, I don't get support. If I'm thriving, I get resentment. The only way to receive care in my family is to be less than Ethan. "I'm not doing this anymore," I said, and my voice shook, not from fear, from holding back years. "I'm not your quiet child you can ignore, because I won't make a scene. Ethan doesn't get to build a fake version of himself out of my real work." Ethan laughed bitterly. "You're obsessed," he spat. "You can't stand that I'm the one people listen to." I looked at him, truly looked. His eyes were bright with rage, but underneath it was something else, panic. Because lies aren't just words. They're scaffolding. If you pull one plank out, the whole structure wobbles. "I don't want people to listen to me," I said. "I want you to stop speaking for me." My mom sobbed and my dad rubbed his face like he was exhausted, like I was making his life hard by having a spine. Ethan shook his head slowly. "You're dead to me," he said. My mom gasped. "Ethan." I felt my stomach drop, but I didn't collapse. I didn't plead. I just said, "Okay." That word seemed to shock him more than anything, because he expected tears. He expected guilt. He expected me to come running back to fix the family mood. I turned and walked out. In my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at my parents' front door. My chest hurt in a sharp, stupid way, like grief had teeth. I thought about turning around. About going back in and apologizing for the delivery, for the tone, for the audacity of wanting respect. I didn't. And that's where I'm going to pause the narrative, because that was the moment I knew my life was going to split into before and after, and I didn't know yet what after would cost. Okay, stepping out of story mode for a second, because Ethan is the kind of person who makes you question your own reality while he's actively rewriting it in front of you. What's wild isn't just that he lied about your career, it's that he did it with that casual confidence people only have when they've been enabled forever. He didn't even tell a small lie. He told a foundational lie. He wanted to be seen as the architect of your success because he can't tolerate the idea that you built something without him. Your parents are the bigger issue, honestly. Ethan is loud and obvious. Your parents are quiet and consistent. They've trained you to believe that being fine means you don't deserve protection. They treat your competence like a self-sustaining machine. It runs, so they don't need to maintain it. Meanwhile, Ethan's instability becomes a family project everyone pours into. That's not love. That's addiction to the role he plays. Also, that moment where your dad said enough but aimed it at you, that's the whole dynamic in a sentence. You're the problem because you disrupted the peace, not because Ethan broke trust. It's such a common family illness, and it's infuriating because it makes the most responsible person carry the emotional bill. And you saying okay to "you're dead to me" is honestly the most powerful part. Not because it's cold, but because it's a refusal to audition. You didn't beg to be treated like a human. You accepted that he was going to weaponize guilt, and you didn't give him the payoff. That's the kind of boundary that changes a life. Update. So, a lot happened after I walked out of my parents' house and sat in my car feeling like someone had scooped out my insides with a spoon. First, the fallout wasn't immediate silence. It was a barrage. My mom called 8 times that night. 8. I watched my phone light up on the passenger seat like it was a creature trying to crawl toward me. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I didn't trust myself not to fold. I knew if I heard her cry, I'd start explaining again. And explaining is the trap. Explaining gives them the illusion that if they argue well enough, my boundaries will dissolve. My dad texted, "Come back. We need to finish this conversation like adults." Which would have been funny if it didn't hurt. Like adults. As if I hadn't just been the only adult in that room. Ethan didn't text again that night, but the next day I got a message from my cousin Lena. "Are you okay? Your brother is telling everyone you lost it and screamed at him at your fancy event." I stared at that text and felt this slow, boiling rage. Because Ethan wasn't just upset. He was doing what he always does when he's exposed, spreading a version of events where he's the victim of my cruelty. And it was working because family narratives are sticky. People would rather believe Layla is dramatic than Ethan is a liar because the first one is familiar.
He replied to Lena, "I'm okay."
He lied about my career to my boss and then posted about mentoring me online. I asked him to stop. That's it. Lena replied, "I believe you. Also, he's been telling people he works at your company." That made my stomach drop. I called Lena immediately. My voice sounded calm, but my hands were sweating. "What do you mean he's been telling people he works at my company?" She hesitated. "He told Aunt Rania he's in strategy there. And he told my boyfriend he could get him in." The room tilted. Because that wasn't just annoying. That was dangerous. My company is strict about misrepresentation. Ethan was essentially claiming an affiliation he didn't have. If someone tried to use his connection and it got back to us, it could become a reputational problem. And I was already the person in my family tied most publicly to the company. I called my boss. I hated that I had to. I hated that my family mess had crawled into my professional life, like mud on clean shoes. Nina listened without interrupting, her tone steady. When I finished, she said, "Thank you for telling me. We'll handle it." "What does handle it mean?" I asked, throat tight. "It means legal," she said simply. "He can't claim employment. He can't use our name to leverage opportunities. We'll send a cease and desist." The word legal made my heart hammer. Because the second you bring legal into a family story, people stop hearing the truth and start hearing betrayal. They start saying things like, "How could you do that to your own blood?" But Nina wasn't asking for my permission. She was protecting the company. And me, by extension. That afternoon, Ethan posted again, this time on Instagram stories, something vague and dramatic about snakes in your own family, and jealousy is a disease.
I didn't respond.
I muted him months ago, but someone sent screenshots. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew. My mom came to my apartment 2 days later. This time, she didn't text first. She just showed up, knocking like she was late to something. I stood on the other side of my door with my hand on the lock, heart thudding. I didn't want to let her in. I also didn't want her making a scene in my hallway. When I opened the door, she stepped forward like she was going to hug me, then stopped when she saw my face. She looked frantic. Mascara smudged. Hair pulled back too tightly. She held her phone in her hand like a weapon. "You called your work on Ethan," she said, and it wasn't a question. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance with my body. "He told people he worked there," I said. "That's not my fault." My mom's chest rose and fell quickly. "They sent him a letter," she said, voice shaking. "A legal letter. Do you understand what you've done?" I felt my mouth go dry. "They sent him a cease and desist," I corrected. My mom's eyes flashed. "Don't correct me," she snapped, then immediately softened into pleading. "Layla, please. He's terrified. He thinks he's going to be sued." "He should be terrified," I said, and my voice surprised even me with how flat it sounded. "He's been lying." My mom shook her head like she couldn't process it. "Why are you being like this?" she whispered, as if I'd become a stranger overnight. I swallowed hard. "Because I'm tired," I said. "I'm tired of Ethan treating my life like a tool. I'm tired of you asking me to sacrifice my peace, so he can keep pretending." My mom started to cry, silent tears at first, then louder. "We're family," she said, voice breaking. "You don't do this to family." I felt something ache in my chest, but I didn't move. "Family doesn't do this to me," I said quietly. "But you let him." She looked at me, really looked, and for a second it was like she saw the years stacked behind my eyes. Then she wiped her face, anger creeping in. "So you want to destroy him," she said. I almost laughed, but it came out like a sigh. "I want him to stop using me," I said. "If the truth destroys his image, then his image was a lie." My mom's jaw tightened. "Your father is furious," she said, like that was supposed to scare me back into line. "He says you've changed." "I have," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then said, "Fine." Her voice turned cold. "If you want to act like you don't have a brother, then don't come asking us for anything." The old fear flared in me. The fear of being cut off. The fear of being alone. Then I looked past her into the hallway, at the quiet building, at the life I pay for with my own work, and the fear shrank. "I haven't been asking," I said. My mom flinched like I'd slapped her. She stepped back, eyes bright with rage and hurt. "You're heartless," she whispered. And I said, "No. I'm just not available for this anymore." I closed the door. I slid down against it afterward, breathing hard. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I'd amputated something infected, and now I was waiting to see if the bleeding would stop. The next week, Ethan tried a different tactic. He called me at midnight. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice was thick, shaky, like he was trying to sound broken. "Layla, I don't know what you want from me. I was just proud of you. I was trying to hype you up. And you did this. You made me look crazy. Mom's crying all day. Dad won't stop yelling. I can't sleep. Are you happy?" The manipulation was almost impressive. Proud of me. Hype you up. As if telling my boss I was an assistant type was praise. But here's the thing. The voicemail still hurt. Because it dangled that old hope in front of me, that maybe he loved me in his own warped way, that maybe I was overreacting. So I forwarded the voicemail to Nina because I needed an anchor in reality. Then I sat on my couch and listened to it again, and I wrote down, literally on paper, the facts I knew were true. Ethan lied. Ethan posted about mentoring me. Ethan claimed employment. Ethan blamed me for consequences. I went to work the next day and did my job. That was my rebellion, normalcy. A month later, I got a message from Nina. "Quick update. Legal confirmed he's stopped using the company name. Also, the scholarship board loved your speech. They want you to join as an advisor next year." I read that message 3 times. Advisor. Board. Not because my brother guided me. Because I earned it. That night I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. A quiet one. I was going to build something that had my name on it, something no one could twist into. Ethan helped. Not to spite him. To protect myself. Continuing and finishing the story. I joined the scholarship board 6 months later. It started as quarterly meetings and email chains, then turned into real work, reviewing applications, mentoring students, connecting interns with opportunities. The first time a student emailed me saying, "Thank you for taking my call. I didn't think anyone would." I sat at my desk after hours and stared at the city lights outside my office window until my eyes burned. I told my parents about it eventually, not for their approval, just because it felt like something they should know if they were going to be in my life at all. My dad responded with a thumbs-up emoji, which I ignored because I promised myself no emojis in my own story, and also because it felt like a lazy substitute for pride. My mom said, "That's nice," and then asked if I'd heard from Ethan. I hadn't. Not directly. But I heard things through the family grapevine because families are basically gossip machines with emotional consequences. Ethan told people he was taking a break from toxic dynamics. He told people I'd changed and gotten cold. He told people he was going through something. Then one night I got an email from a recruiter. Subject line: Ethan, last name, referral? My stomach dropped so fast I felt nauseous. I opened it with shaking hands. The recruiter wrote, politely, that Ethan had listed me as a professional reference and claimed we'd worked together. She wanted to confirm. I stared at my laptop screen, heat rushing up my neck. Even after the legal letter, even after the blow-up, he was still trying. Different shape, same behavior. Using me as a ladder. I replied immediately, "I cannot confirm that. Ethan and I have never worked together. Please remove my name from his references." Then I forwarded it to Ethan with one sentence, "Do not use my name again." He replied within minutes, "You're really going to do this?" I didn't answer. 2 days later, my dad called and asked if we could meet. Just him and me. His voice sounded tired. We met at a diner near my apartment, the kind with sticky menus and old people drinking coffee at 7 p.m. He sat across from me, hands wrapped around a mug, eyes fixed on the tabletop like he was ashamed of it. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Okay," I replied, bracing. He took a breath. "Were we unfair to you?" he asked. The question hit me so hard I had to blink a few times. Because it was the first time my dad had ever asked me a question that required him to accept an answer he didn't like. "Yes," I said simply. He flinched, then nodded like he deserved it. "Your mother doesn't want to hear that," he admitted. She thinks you should just let things go." "I've been letting things go my whole life," I said. He rubbed his face, eyes red. "I know," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I just watched him, trying to figure out if this was real, or if it was another attempt to restore the old balance where Ethan got comfort and I got expectations." My dad looked up at me. "Ethan is not okay," he said. I held my breath, waiting for the request. "He's angry," my dad continued. "He's blaming you." But he swallowed. "He also got himself here." I stared at him. "Yes," I said. My dad nodded again, slower. "I want to keep you in my life," he said. "I don't want to lose you, because I kept trying to keep peace." Something in my chest softened, not fully, but enough to breathe. "Then stop asking me to sacrifice myself for peace," I said. He nodded. "Okay," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. That was the closest thing to resolution I got with my dad. Not a perfect apology. Not a full reckoning. But a shift, small, real. As for Ethan, he didn't stop trying to rewrite reality. He just got quieter about it. I heard he started telling people I was uptight and corporate-brained, like ambition was a character flaw. I heard he was job-hopping again. I heard his girlfriend left because she was tired of everything being someone else's fault. I didn't reach out. Instead, I kept building. A year after the gala, I launched a mentorship program through the scholarship board, pairing students with professionals in our network. It was small at first. 10 students. 10 mentors. I spent weekends matching profiles, writing guidelines, making sure nobody fell through cracks. On the first night of the program kickoff, I stood in a community center with folding chairs and cheap snacks, watching students introduce themselves with nervous smiles, and I felt something settle inside me. Legacy is a dramatic word people use when they want applause. But standing there, watching a shy kid in a thrifted blazer say, "I didn't think I'd belong in rooms like this," I understood legacy in a quiet way. It wasn't about making Ethan regret anything. It wasn't about proving my parents wrong. It was about building a life that didn't require anyone else to validate it. My brother lied about my career because he needed to feel bigger than me. I exposed him because I refused to be made smaller. And I built my own legacy because once you stop handing your story to other people, you finally have both hands free to make something real. Ethan is the kind of person who treats other people's achievements like props in his personal theater. He doesn't just lie to look good. He lies to feel safe. Because if you're allowed to shine without him, then he has to face the terrifying possibility that he's responsible for his own life. So he borrows your light and calls it support. And the second you refuse, he frames you as cruel. Classic move. He's not a misunderstood puppy. He's a grown man who kept using your name like a credit card he didn't earn, then acted shocked when the bank called fraud. If Ethan wants respect, he needs to build something that doesn't require stealing the foundation from under his sister. Your mom? She's the emotional lobbyist for Ethan's behavior. She's not signing the lies herself, but she's stamping them as family peace and guilt-tripping you into silence. Her big issue isn't that she loves Ethan. It's that she loves the version of the family where Ethan is the center and she is needed. Your independence threatens her role. So she calls you heartless when you stop playing along. That's not motherhood. That's emotional management disguised as care. Your dad is the quiet accomplice, and honestly, that can be the most damaging kind because it makes you doubt your own perception. He doesn't scream, he doesn't scheme, he just chooses the path that keeps him comfortable. But I'll give him credit. He finally asked the real question. Were we unfair? That's a crack in the wall. It doesn't undo years, but it means he's capable of change, which is more than I can say for Ethan right now. And you? You did something rare. You chose reality over belonging. You didn't ruin your brother's reputation. He did, by building it on fiction. You didn't break your family. You exposed a dynamic that was already broken and just happened to benefit everyone except you. The most satisfying part isn't the public correction at the gala, though that was deserved. It's the way you stopped negotiating your worth with people who only valued you when you were useful. You built a legacy that isn't a trophy. It's a structure. It helps other people. And the best revenge in this whole story is that your life kept expanding the moment you stopped letting them shrink you.